I want to take you back to what's it been a couple of weeks ago now when Kamala Harris first introduced Tim Walz as her running mate to the rest of the country. And he gave his first big speech at a rally. And he had a line in that speech where he was talking about various Republican policies and proposals that would insert the government into people's private lives and into people's personal decisions about their health care or their families or whatever. And he said, where I come from in Minnesota, we believe that people should be free to choose how they want to live their lives. And even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, we have a saying about that: mind your own damn business. And that got a big positive reaction from the crowd, a lot of applause, as it should have. It's a good line and it's a good principle to follow, But it's not always the principle you want to follow, is it? There are times when minding your own business is not the right thing to do or the best thing to do. And I guess maybe some people aren't sure where to draw that line. How do you know when to mind your own business? And how do you know when to not mind your own business? Because I have a very similar philosophy. I'm a very live and let live person, and I'm a very mind your own business type person too. And the way I draw the line is this, and I feel like this is a pretty solid philosophy, and I'm surely not the first person to ever say this because I'm not that smart. The line is, as long as what another person is doing is not harming someone else or not creating some kind of harm that could potentially affect other people, and as long as it has nothing to do with you, mind your own business. Now, if the other person is doing something that does affect you, then it's automatically your business. Then actually you kind of are minding your own business in that case. If it affects you and another person is doing it, then it's not a case of mind your own business. You are minding your business if it affects you. But if it doesn't affect you, but it does affect other people and it's causing harm, it's hurting someone else or hurting a lot of someone else's, if it's harmful on either an individual level or a more group level, then it is okay to mind your own business. Then it might even be morally imperative to mind your own business, depending on the harm or the potential harm that we're talking about. And the confusion, I guess, comes from a lot of us not being sure whether or not something affects us. Because there are a lot of things that some of us have really strong personal feelings about that really don't have anything to do with us. And because we have those strong personal feelings, we can sometimes allow ourselves to mistakenly think that it does have something to do with us when it doesn't. And for some reason, like sexually related issues in terms of gender orientation, or sexual orientation, gender identity, and just like personal habits or personal likes or dislikes or proclivities in the sex department. A lot of people have really strong opinions on that as far as what people should or shouldn't be doing, what is or isn't okay. And they feel like these opinions of theirs apply to everybody, whether they themselves are involved in any of these activities or not. And because they have those feelings, they believe that that gives them some kind of jurisdiction over, whether or not they can make it their business. And the thing is, not only is that a bad basis for public policy, and not only does that lead to some really terrible public policy and can lead to abuses on the part of institutions who are, constituted so that they feel like they have the right to insert themselves into people's bedrooms or into people's private decisions. But it can also just be embarrassing sometimes, like on a personal level. You can end up sticking your foot in your mouth or finding yourself in a situation that you would rather not be in. And I'll tell you about my favorite example of that, because it didn't actually happen to me, but it happened in front of me. And this was a long time ago. This was 20 years ago, 22, 23 years ago. It's been a long time. My best friend and I at the time were hanging out, and we were hanging out with my best friend's younger sister. And so the three of us were just sort of, hanging out. And I have no idea how the conversation got to this subject. It's hard to tell. But somehow, by some route, we wound up talking about anal sex, buggery, bumming, the third way, right? Talking about anal sex, which, to be completely honest with you, is not something that I have ever had a particular interest in. It's not something I have any significant experience with. It's not something I think about very much. But I figure if other people are interested in it or enjoy it or like to do it, as long as they're not hurting anybody else, as long as they're being safe and consensual, not my business. Have fun, right? But my friend at the time, it turns out, had weirdly strong opinions about this. Like, he didn't like it. He didn't think, and I don't think he was speaking from personal experience. I think he just had this opinion about it. He found it dirty. He found it gross. He found it disgusting. He didn't approve of it. And generally speaking, he was not an intolerant person. Like a lot of people who have really strong negative opinions about anal sex, it turns out that they're just homophobic and they associate anal sex with gay people and they're like, ew, gross. This friend I'm talking about was generally speaking not like that, right? He was not a bigoted, intolerant person. He was not hostile to gay people. He, like myself, was extremely hetero, but he did not have like a homophobic streak in him, at least not that I ever saw. So I don't know what his particular deal was with having like a special revulsion toward anal sex, but that's just, that was just an opinion he shared. And somehow we ended up talking about it on this night in question. And I sort of took the opposite side. I was more of well, it doesn't have anything to do with you, so who cares? Like, if people want to do it and they're doing it in a safe way and it's consensual and nobody's being hurt, who cares? What's it matter? Who cares? And then my friend made his fatal error, which I will relive in my mind with great amusement, probably for the rest of my life. He turned to his sister and he wanted her opinion. And he assumed that his sister would be on his side, I guess, because they had grown up together. And he assumed that they were of a similar mind on things. And in a lot of ways, they were. So he's arguing with me about this. And he turns to his sister and he solicits her opinion. And he's reaching to his sister for the tag, right? He wants his sister to come in and back him up on this. And he turns to her and he says, "What do you think about anal sex?" And his sister looks at him, shrugs, and says, "I enjoy it." Thank you. I don't believe in God, but thank you, God. What a moment. I mean, he thought he was reaching out to his sister for the tag, but instead of tagging herself in and coming into his rescue to clean house, she popped him right in the mouth. The heel turn of all heel turns. It was beautiful. And I will always remember it. And I will always use it, not just as a fun story to tell people, but as a lesson to be remembered and held tightly. Be very, very careful when you choose to mind other people's business. Be very, very careful when you make a point and attempt perhaps to even make a virtue of minding other people's business, and then you reach out to that ally that you know is going to be on your side, because it might just turn out that they're not as on your side as you think. And then, bam, there comes the shot that you never saw coming. And you start to think, damn, maybe I should have kept my mouth shut about that anal sex stuff. Why were we even talking about that? Like, why do I even care that much? Why do I even give a good goddamn about it? I had to mentally go through a list there.